All right, don't say anything stupid. We're on the recording now. Something. All right, I'm passing out these. Leave these out. Why are these all out of order? Got a no name here. So it's one of you two, and the other one didn't fill out anything. Or didn't turn in anything. Who did that? All right. Oh, your horses. Okay, see if you can find it. Those of you listening online, I'm sorry I'm starting late. It's my fault and Aiden's. And are you sure do you have yours still? It's the notes from a couple days ago. I'll put this here just in case. I don't know why I'm not ready. Good teacher would have been ready. Okay. Now, look, this is supposed to be done, this particular part that we're doing right now, last Thursday, but, you know. So, I'm going to try to go through this with you. You've done a lot of this work already, though. I think you did it on Friday. So, here's the deal. I'd like to ask you the question, how many of you think Herbert Hoover was a bad president? Okay, now, how many of you think he was a great president? How many of you don't know? And how many of you don't care? Okay, that's fine. By the way, those of you listening, there's only like 2 people who said he was bad, 1 person who said he was good, and most people didn't care or didn't know. So that's that. Now, look, fine. If you don't care about whether it's good or bad president, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you that you have to care about it. But here's the deal. If you want to be a decent American citizen, and maybe just a decent person too, there's a list of rules, or at least maybe a couple principles that you should have for evaluating whether or not a president is a good president, right? How about this? Have you heard this lately? Darn President Biden. Gas prices are too high. He stinks. Heard that lately?
Yeah.
Right. Does the president have anything to do with gas prices? No. The only thing that he could do is release our oil reserves into supply to raise supply, which would lower price, right? But do we want to release our oil reserves? No, because what is that supposed to be used for? Military emergencies. And considering what's going on in Ukraine right now, I wouldn't want to do that, right? That would be a bad move for the president, right? The president can't control that. But you've heard people say that, right? Why do they say that? Because, I don't know, they're frustrated. They want to blame somebody, right? You can blame presidents for things, but you should blame them for the right things and not for the wrong things. And you know what? While I have your attention, well, do I have your attention? I have some of your attention. I've got about 3/4 of their attention. Those of you who are listening online. Let's just address this right now. How many of you have heard lately? Biden's got the bitch up. Yes, he's lost it. He's lost it. He's just got the bitch up.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't know if it was you that said it, or your parents that said it, or your grandparents, or your drunk uncle, right? or the guy on the news last night, how many of them were qualified to diagnose dementia? And if they were qualified to diagnose dementia, had they had President Biden in the room and actually evaluated him? No. Right? Here's the thing, is that we say stuff about presidents and we have no idea what we're talking about. And I guess that's okay, but when you're in my class and you say Hoover was a bad president or whatever, then I'm going to ask you, prove it. Right? Because you're in a history class with me. Right? And if you say to me, Mr. Beavers, no, President Hoover, the best president we've had in a long time because the economy was so good, I'm going to look at you and say, he doesn't get the credit for that. He didn't invent the internet, which was coming out at the time, and was the reason why the economy was so good. His vice president, Al Gore, claimed he invented the internet. That's a joke if you are my age. Okay, so, here's the point. Hoover president, oh my gosh.
That's Slater?
Wow.
What?
That has to be from
I actually forgot that I put this up here, but this reminds me. If I am friends with your parents on social media, watch out. Watch out. Watch out. Carlos Sr. Yeah. Facebook friends. No, this is what this should have been next, right? Blame Hoover. This is a political cartoon from the era saying, people from all walks of life, all pointing at Hoover, saying, blame it on Hoover. Now, I mean, look at yesterday's stuff. Should we blame Hoover for the stock market crash?
Is that a bag? It's a bird. It's a bag. It's like a pencil pouch. It's a pencil
Oh.
It's a pencil bag.
Oh. I didn't notice that. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even realize that. It looks like somebody took the political cartoon and made a
Political pencil pouch.
political pencil pouch. Yeah.
I'm gonna buy
Well,
that. Can I buy that?
go buy it online. Get me one, and I will not wear it or carry it around, but I'll put it in my room. All right, this is what people were thinking back then, and this is what people think today. Right now, this is where I want to get to by the end of this period. This is where you see this on the very back of your notes. You've got a lot of these notes already, so this shouldn't take all that long. But this is where I want to get to. Hoover was considered a bad president because. Don't write it yet. Don't fill it out yet. But I'm going to ask you, why did people back then think that? And then all you got to do is fill in you don't have to even write a whole sentence. Just complete this sentence. Hoover was considered a bad president, but, and to complete the sentence, you'll say something about something good he did. Hoover was considered a bad president, therefore, what was a historical consequence? That's where I'm going, okay? That's where I hope that you will follow me to. But first, I want to talk to you about him. If we're going to say he's a terrible president, or he's a good president, or we don't care, whatever, I just want you to know something about this man. Look at him. He looks so dapper and proper with that hair. Suit right there. Very proper gentleman, very successful person. You can see by the way he's dressed that's Herbert Hoover. He was a Quaker. Now, this is the first thing on your notes. Now, you don't have to write that down because it's already there, but do you remember anything about Quakers? They're a Christian religious group. Pennsylvania was a Quaker colony, hence the Quaker oatmeal. Anything about World War I when we talked about Quakers? Yeah. Conscientious objectors. They took it literally when the Bible says "Thou shalt not kill." They in all cases, you should not even in war. Right? Some Quakers refused to drink alcohol. Some Quakers refused to, use curse words. Not Richard Nixon, the other Quaker who was president. He cursed like a sailor. What's that? He did serve in the military, but I don't think he was a sailor. Yeah. He's taking
a lot of people back then.
He did serve in the military, so that might be one thing, as you'll see when we get to Band of Brothers. But one other thing about Quakers that is stereotypical, right? Oh, wait. No, I need to tell you this because why not? It has nothing to do with this, right? Quakers, back in like the 1700s in England, refused to take off their hats when they went into public buildings. Do you understand the prohibition against wearing hats in public buildings? Yeah. When you wear a hat into a public building, it is a sign of disrespect towards the institution. If you wear a hat into church, that's considered to be disrespectful to the people at the church and the church itself, right? Into the school, into the courtroom. By the way, if you ever go to court, I hope you don't wear a hat into the court, but they would wear the hat into the court because they said our only allegiance is to God, not to the courtroom. So, Brandon, go ahead and look that thing up. Go ahead. Go ahead. Look it up.
Oh, my hood.
Look it up. He can now tell Mr. Ellswick if he wants, I have a religious objection to the hood wearing policy. I'm a Quaker. I refuse, and then he might, I don't know, you think it'll work?
Probably not.
Probably not, because you're probably not a Quaker, right? Okay.
No.
The other thing about Quakers, historically, stereotypically, was that they taught back then the Protestant work ethic, meaning if you work hard, you will be rewarded with material financial success. And he followed that. He was not very rich. He wasn't like dirt poor, but he wasn't rich. And he made himself into a millionaire. He got into Stanford University. If you don't know anything about Stanford, it's in California. It's one of the most elite schools in the country. And he got in there on his hard work and his brains, and he made himself into a millionaire through engineering projects here and in China in the early 1900s and late 1800s. And as he gets wealthy and as he gets all this experience in business and so on, Woodrow Wilson looks at him during World War One and says, "Hey, you're pretty good at running big organizations. I had this big organization I want you to run," and he made him the food administration. The head of the food administration, if you remember, that food administration was in charge of meatless, wheatless, porkless Thursday. You would think Friday because of the old Catholic not eating meat on Friday thing, but no. Sweetless Saturday. Okay. Yeah.
Wait, hang on. What if you didn't do that? Would you get in trouble if you didn't follow those rules?
Not yet. World War II, there is rationing. This was just recommended, right? As part of that, actually, I can't remember if it was like right before he became food administrator or maybe during. Remember how Belgium was attacked during World War One by Germany, and Belgium didn't do anything to deserve it, right? Well, Herbert Hoover shows that he cares about people and uses his massive wealth and his ability to get things done to administrate and gets relief supplies coordinated to be shipped to Belgium, help those people out who've been just rampaged by the German army. So, what I think this shows is that he's very successful and he cares about people, right? Okay, now, extremely popular because of this, and then both parties, Republican and Democrat, wanted him to be part of their political party, and he chose the Republicans. And in the 1920s, he was the Secretary of Commerce for Harding and Coolidge during an era in which commerce was booming, right? And so he gets a lot of the credit for that booming period of the economy. And you might think, oh, that's all well and good, but he's still just a rich guy, rich white man sitting behind a desk doing stuff, right, getting money. And my answer to that is yes, but he shows again while he's Secretary of Commerce that he cares about people. There's a huge flood in Mississippi along the Mississippi River. I mean, miles, dozens of miles up and down the Mississippi River, all this terrible flood. And he coordinates the efforts to go help those people out, and he goes there himself. Like he gets his hands dirty. Right? He doesn't sit back there sipping his tea. For those of you online, I'm putting my pinky up, like a hoity-toity Englishman drinking tea. Right? He actually cares about people and he goes and does stuff. And so he's rewarded in 1928 with this landslide victory. Right? This huge victory over Al Smith. And just to remind you, red is Republican. And so, there you go, right? Al Smith gets throttled. The red states are Hoover states. Okay, so he has all this promise, right? And literally, it's only like 7 months into his administration, 6, 7. Actually, here's where he gets into office, and notice how the stock market goes because people are confident under Hoover that he's going to be a good president for business. And then the stock market crashes, and people start wondering. Right now, only 2% of the population in stock. So this doesn't hit the rest of the country yet. It's not a Great Depression yet. And in fact, in this little part right here, if you're online, I'm looking at the part that's right underneath the arrow that says crash. What are you thinking if you're living through these weeks right here? Maybe it's over, right? But then, I don't know when it turned into a Great Depression, but we can all agree that by here, when it bottoms out, it's a Great Depression. And notice, that's about the time that he loses the election to Franklin Roosevelt. Notice this. I don't know when this becomes a Great Depression, but I know it's during his administration that we get 25% unemployment. 1 out of every 4 people can't find a job. So at least by here, it's a Great Depression. And notice, even though that's in the way of the timeline, that's about the time that he leaves office. Okay, so what do people say about Hoover? People say then and now he's a terrible president. People say then and now he didn't care about suffering people. People say then and now he did nothing to help out to get us out of the Great Depression. And people say he bears the blame, as you saw that political purse. Blame Hoover. Pencil purse. Political pencil purse. Now, I think that I've given you sufficient evidence to prove that that's not true already. And you're going to find that this is not true either. You can say that he's a terrible president, and you can say that he bears the blame, and that's fine, but you have to do it with some kind of evidence, okay? All right? If you tell me by the end of this he didn't do anything, then I'm not going to kick you in the teeth, because that would get me fired, and that would be a wrong thing to do as a teacher. But I might make a little doll and do that to it, right? Pretend it's you. Because you can't say he did nothing, and we're about ready to see it. I'm not into voodoo, but we'll call it something close, right? Oh, and this is for tomorrow. We're going to start this tomorrow. So many people, and by the way, I've heard all of these things before. So many people say FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who came in after Hoover, he's the one who saved the day. We'll see if you think that's the truth too. Okay, his philosophy. I had the other classes do this, like in a textbook, but I'm just going to give it to you. Hoover believed in rugged individualism, that people should succeed or fail on their own efforts. And what that means is, rugged means tough. Individualism means I do it on my own. If you fail, the government shouldn't come and bail you out. You failed because you failed. And if you succeed, the government shouldn't come along and take half of what you earned because you earned it. That's his viewpoint. That America should be tough, if you know what I mean. He also says it is not the federal government's job to give welfare checks. They called it direct relief, direct payments. And in other words, what I'm saying is the federal government writes a check and says, here you go. You're down and out. Here's some money. Go cash it. Where you didn't have to do anything to earn it. He opposes that. Now, so far you can say, I knew he was a bad president, and I have 2 good reasons why right here, because I don't believe this. This is not what I believe. Or you can say, you know what, I just had a new revelation about him, because he believes exactly what I think. But what you can't say is that he said, you know what, poor people, they suck. I'm just going to kick them while they're down. That's not his attitude. Someone should help out people who are down and out. He just thinks it's not the government's job to do that. That who should do it? Local organizations like the Red Cross, charities like the Salvation Army, churches, soup kitchens, bread lines. That's their job. That's what they were created to do. The government wasn't created to do that. Agree or disagree is fine, but I'm telling you, like, he's not saying I don't care about people. He's just saying I want people to be tough, right? But how did people respond during his presidency? Right? What is this? Online people, I'm pulling out my empty pocket and I'm waving it around in the wind.
What?
It's a Hoover flag, right? Why?
Because waving a red flag.
Whose fault is it that my pockets are empty and no money? Hoover's fault. If I have lost my house and I'm sleeping on a park bench, and the only thing I had to cover me is a newspaper, that is called Hoover blanket. And of course, the shanty towns were called Hoovervilles as well, because people were assigning the blame to Hoover. Okay, now here's where you have done some work. If you had this down, awesome. If you don't have this down, please make sure that you get something corrected here. Now I want to go into what did he actually do? He did stuff. Right? The very first thing he did in office was he took a statistical study of the country. He commissioned the federal government to go out and study what is the country like. And he found all sorts of things. Like the farming industry really is suffering right now. It wasn't like he said, you know what, they suck. Let them deal with their own crap, right? He didn't say that. He put in a federal government policy to help them. Do you have something like this for Federal Farm Board? Something like this? If you don't, please get that down. Something like that down. But basically what he's saying is, we want to help the farmers. What was the problem after World War I? Were farmers producing too much or too little? Too much. So what happened to the price of goods? It went down. So this is saying the federal government should buy up crops, take it off the market, pretend like they don't even exist, and if the supply goes down, then what will happen to the price? That was the plan. Did it work? Not really. And you can say it's not the federal government's job to do this, they should stay out of that. The federal government should be buying crops and then letting them rot. Or you could say he should have done more, but you can't say he did nothing, right? People were losing their homes. Do you have something like this down for the next one? If the problem is people are losing their homes and farmers are losing their farms, well then let's have a federal program to help them refinance so they can pay lower interest rates. It worked for some people. It didn't change the entirety of the Great Depression, but he tried. You can say he didn't do enough, but you can't say he didn't do anything. And for heaven's sake, what's the nickname of this thing? Whose dam? Hoover's dam, right? The nickname is after Hoover. And he gets all the blame for all this other stuff that's going on. Shouldn't he get the credit for this? Now, you can tell me that it's not enough, that there should have been dozens of these happening, sure. But you can't say he did nothing. Look at all the jobs he created and money that was pumped into the economy. And by the way, do you remember from the video, what city is now powered by Hoover Dam?
Like Vegas.
The place I told you never to go.
Same city.
Just great. And it got to the point where if these things weren't working, that Hoover said, all right, fine, we're going to spend more money than we've ever spent before, and the Reconstruction Finance Corporation was just that. The federal government, if you don't count war, had never spent $2 billion on anything before this. Now, today you laugh at that because we have $2 trillion spending bills coming out, but this one program back then, nothing had ever been that expensive if you don't count like World War I and the Civil War. And what it's doing is bailing out businesses, keep them from going under, banks, insurance companies, railroads, and he spends a ton of money. And you might say, Mr. Beavers, the government has no job bailing out businesses, let them fail, that's just the way it goes. Or you can say, Mr. Beavers, he should have put in $10 billion more, but you can't say he did nothing. Am I beating a dead horse yet? Okay, thank you. Now, how about this? The Dust Bowl. You know, this area in yellow right here, drought, high winds, topsoil depleted from over farming, and this red part right here is the worst part of it, right? You can see it's a lot in Kansas and Oklahoma and northern Texas. The video that we watched on, was it Friday? No, yesterday. It wasn't that wasn't an exaggeration. We're talking about windstorms that looked like that. Imagine yourself standing right here, looking at that thing. You're probably peeing your pants, right? There's no escaping it. It's not like a tornado that you can outrun. Don't ever try to outrun a tornado, right? Like you can't outrun those, right? Now, before I talk about blaming Hoover and all that kind of stuff, let's talk about these people. These people were from mainly Oklahoma, but also Kansas and Texas and so on. You remember what they were nicknamed? They're fleeing the Dust Bowl. They're nicknamed Okies because a lot of them are from Oklahoma. The Arkies were from Arkansas, right? And they're loading up everything they have because they know they can't make it into the Dust Bowl anymore, and they're trying to find their fortune. They're going on Route 66, picking up right here all the way out to the Promised Land, which is California. Why California? Gold rush is over because of the beaches, Hollywood. No, that's not what the farmers are interested in. There's a whole bunch of fertile soil right here in this part of California, and they want to farm. This will be on the test, by the way. Okies traveling on Route 66 to California for farming jobs, a reason for migration. This is an environmental disaster, right? How much of this is Hoover's fault? That's not his fault at all, right? Now, if you're living in the time, you're probably thinking, God himself is angry with us for whatever we did wrong in the 1920s, and he's fighting us right now with this environmental disaster, right? And I don't know about all that, but you can imagine you would think that, right? If we can't blame Hoover for the Dust Bowl, I get it. That's a silly thing, right? It's not like he went out there and dug up all the dirt himself, threw it into the air, and high winds came, right? What can we blame him for? Yeah. Well, that's one, right? That might be one. What did he do after? FDR will try some soil conservation projects, but as far as I know, FDR, I don't think that is something you can blame him for. Now, I want to stop right here because this is not about Hoover at all, but this picture is really worth 1,000 words. It really is, and I want this to kind of stick in your memory. If you are thinking about the Dust Bowl, this is the picture that people usually think about. The photographer's name, not the woman in the picture, but the photographer's name was Dorothea Lange. She was actually employed by a New Deal program called the WPA. After Hoover leaves office, FDR comes in. He has all these big programs, and one of them paid artists to do art. They would literally pay tap dance lessons and for murals to be painted on walls. And Dorothea Lange went around and she took pictures of the Dust Bowl. And this one is called Migrant Mother. And probably most of you have never really either haven't seen this picture before, or maybe you have, but you don't know much about her backstory. Is that where most of you are at right now, right? But I bet that you could look at the picture and you could tell me something about this woman. Just by what you see in the picture. What do you think is going on in her mind? Why is she looking the way she's looking? What's going on in the kids' minds? What do you think's going on here? Anybody want to?
She looks devastated because she just lost this thing. Everything.
Right. The title "Migrant Mother" helps, right? Right. That is not a look of hope, right? That's a look of despair. Yeah.
She looks a little bit stressed out.
Right. Now, I don't want to look. I'm not trying to wrinkle shame anybody, right? I'm not one to wrinkle shame anybody. Look at that, Travis. Right? See that right there, right? By the way, gentlemen, if you don't want that, ladies too. I mean, anybody, right? If you don't want that, start putting moisturizer right there. Maybe a lanolin right there, so you won't get that like me, right? But she's not as old as me. She's much younger than me, but she's got more lines than I do. Or as many. Right? Where do those come from? Stress and worry, right? Who is she stressed and worried for? And not just herself, definitely her two kids. And by the way, how happy do her kids look? And I've never seen a picture with any dad in it. There's several pictures of her from different angles, right? Um, but we can't blame this on Hoover, can we? Her situation. But here's what we can blame Hoover on. What do you have for, flip over real quick if you're out in the back. If you have nothing for Holly Smooth tariff, please write right here. It killed worldwide trade. The idea behind it makes sense. I want to protect businesses in the United States from foreign competition. But the results are devastating. You can see about the time of the stock market crash, trade goes down across the world, but then it starts to rebound, right? But then the Senate passes this huge tariff bill that raises taxes on foreign goods, and then the whole thing is signed into law, and then over the next couple of years, what happens to worldwide trade? And by the way, that is about the same time that the stock market bottomed out, and that's about the same time that unemployment got to its height, which is also about the same time that Hoover left office. Right? You can't tell me he did nothing. And this is proof he did something. Maybe you could tell me the things he did were bad. Okay. If you don't have this down for midterm elections of 1930, please make sure you get this down. Hoover was a Republican. The people are showing their displeasure by kicking Republicans out of office. The Democrats got the majority, and the Democrats want to spend our way out of the Great Depression. And Hoover, to his credit, goes along with them. He signs the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which is what the Democrats wanted. He's trying to do whatever he can to get us out of the Great Depression, but as you can tell, it's not enough. Now, this next thing, some of you have this and some of you don't. Those of you who have this, please help me out here. The bonus army. Tell me, who were they? Your first one.
World War I veterans that won compensation for their fights that they never got paid.
So that's these first two, actually. Who were they? They had fought in World War I. They were American veterans, and they're marching on Washington, D.C. Not like January 6th, 2001, where people went into Washington, the Capitol, and started smashing things and stealing Nancy Pelosi's computer and chanting they wanted to kill the vice president. Not like that. They were peaceful, right? But they want something that had been promised to them after World War I was over, a bonus for serving in the war. And Congress back then, in 1919, had said, we will give you a bonus, and it'll be about the time you retire from your job, 1945. That's when it was promised to them. Somebody else besides Luke, when did they want the bonus, Mars? They wanted it now, in 1932. Now, somebody besides those two, how many about, Brandon, were there?
10 to 20,000.
Yeah, it's not like somebody was out there, like selling tickets and counting up the tickets, right? But that's the estimate. It was a lot of people. And initially, how did President Hoover respond? Sterling, go ahead. Thank you for your service. Thank you for protesting peacefully. Here's some food. He even gave them supplies so they could build a Hooverville. Of all things, right? Hopefully I didn't go too fast for you all. Everybody good? Everybody good? Okay, so just a picture, right? I mean, these were a lot of darn people. Notice they're not attacking. And their shanty town looks relatively organized. It's not like, there's a whole bunch of drunk people like snatching things up, right? By the way, this is on the National Mall, which all of you will get to see when you go to DC this spring. How many of you are going to DC this spring? A couple of you could. Everybody else, you should go. And if money's an issue, let me know. We can figure something out. Now, did Congress pay them their bonus? No. Did all of them leave? Most of them, but did all of them leave? Does anybody have a number down?
2,000.
About 2,000 of them stayed, and these 2,000 were pretty angry. I'm not sure how much violence that they started committing, but I don't know if it was enough to warrant this. Hoover barricaded himself in the White House and then called out the military to disperse them. Do you see the irony here? The old troops are being kicked out by the new troops. Good. There is violence being done between the two groups. This sounds more like January 6th to me. But notice, it's the government attacking the people, not the people attacking the government, like January 6th. Now, can you give me two names that we should know, Mallory? Why should we know these two names of the new troops who are attacking the old troops? Why should we know them?
Because Eisenhower became president and MacArthur was a general.
So, Supreme Commander of the Pacific Forces in World War II, later Supreme Commander of all forces during the Korean War, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe during World War II, and then President. And they're kicking out the bonus army. And how did this affect Hoover's image? He probably would have lost without this, but this sealed the deal. He's done. There's no way he's getting elected in 1932. Okay, so here's the result. How about this result? Well, first, the fighting back and forth is there's just one example of it. Here's the election map of 1932. The red states are the states that Hoover won.
Yeah.
That's
Notice the states that Hoover won in 1928. And then 4 years later, 28, 32. Do you see a difference? Is it okay to say that Hoover was a bad president? But now, I want you to have evidence. Okay? You have a few minutes left. Look at those very last three questions. It's not even three complete sentences. You're just finishing three sentences. Can you write these sentences using some kind of term from this lecture? Hoover was considered a bad president because why? Hoover was considered a bad president, but give me something that he did that was positive. Be specific. Give me an example. Hoover was considered a bad president, therefore, what was a result? What was a consequence? Try to use examples in each one. If you are done with that, great. If you're not, please write that out. I will collect those in just a minute.